Hi, welcome back to my channel, Scale Model Kit Review Studio, and welcome back to another installment of the FanHome Millennium Falcon. That's right, this is the studio scale Millennium Falcon from The Empire Strikes Back. It's over 3 foot in diameter. Fantastic build here, and I'm really having a blast building this kit. If you want to get this for yourself, head over to FanHome and subscribe to this today. I put a direct link in the description below. So without further ado, let's get started. Welcome back to Scale Model Kit Review Studio, and welcome back to another fantastic installment for the Star Wars Build the Millennium Falcon. And I am currently working on pack number 12. Now, pack number 12, I received 5 more stages, stage 52 through 55, and I'll be continuing with the upper frames of the Falcon. We have the lower frames already done in the previous packs, and making more progress here. Should be a lot of fun. So I'll go ahead and just give you a quick review of the magazine here, just as a review. Each magazine is about 11 to 12 pages, lots of fantastic articles, and the magazine subscription is worth it alone. Great detail here, a lot of facts about the Star Wars universe here. So, Starship Fact File Imperial Gunship, and wonderful there. And Secrets of Spaceflight to Escape Pods, Part 1. Very cool. And then we get our assembly instructions. And this lays it out, all the parts that are included with this particular stage, and step-by-step instructions on assembling the frames. Continuing on there, we work on one of the passage tubes, detailing that out. And then they give us some wonderful painting tips here by Steve Dimzo. Steve's a friend of mine, and he does a fantastic job at modeling. He's a scale modeler like you and I, but he has been working with ILM in the past on model kits, and this is him right here. So fantastic just to have this alone, and you know what to do with this kit, how you want to detail it and how you want to paint it up to look just like the studio model. So Steve Dimzo is president of SD Studios, and I'll put a link in the description below on his site, because he does offer some aftermarket decals for a lot of these kits, and you can always send Steve an email asking him questions, and he'll be more than happy to answer your questions. So here we go. Let's go ahead and get started. Let's look at the parts that came with pack 12. And some more frames, the center ring, and parts for the passage tube for 52. 53, some gribblies, some frames, and a assembly jig. 54, some more frames and assembly jig there also. 55, once again, assembly jig, more armor plating, and some frames. And lastly, 56. Looks like a entry corridor and some frames. And that's what that looks like. So let's go ahead and get started on 52. Let's briefly look at the build instructions for stage 52. 52, get the parts to extend the upper hull framework and add the central turret ring. You have also received armor panels for the passage tube. So we're going to work on the top frames right here. And like always, I'll show you what I did here as we go along. And then we're going to add the passage tube cover. And like I said, I'm not going to show you every screw going in, but if I incur any tips or any problems along the way, I will point those out to you and show them to you. So let me get the parts and I will be right back. Here's the parts pack for 52. Let's get a closer look. And here they are. Here's that center ring for the frame. And we assembled one of these previously with the bottom framework and one of the frames there. We received more screws and some pins here. Detail part, the little chrome detail part there. I'm not sure exactly what that is. Some greebles. All on a sprue there. And then of course passageway made of plastic. Very nice. Looks like, oh, these are the magnets. That's right. So these are the pins and the magnets for that door. Okay, let's get started. And here's the upper frame pieces we assembled in the previous packs. And we're going to install the ring here to this side here. And we got this frame that's going to get inserted in that area right there. And it's going to also attach to the ring. So let me get these started and I will be right back. And there you go. I installed 3 screws here on that frame piece. They are left loose. Now we're going to install the ring, and if you notice there's a notch on the ring here, it's going to line up with the existing notch that's on that piece. So that's going to line up just like that. And we'll put our screws in to hold it in place. We'll get them all started, keep them loose, and then we'll tighten them down when everything is started. I'll be right back. Okay, I got all 10 screws started. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I also had to loosen up one of the screws up here to get everything to line up. Now that everything's started, I'll go ahead and tighten them down and we'll be good to go. Okay, all the screws are tightened down. 13 screws in all, the 10 down here and the 3 up there on that frame panel. They're all tight. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step. Looks great. Next I'm going to install the magnets and pins on these 2 hull panels. And this panel goes down just like that. And if you turn it over, you'll see there's an area to install the pins and the magnets on the other side. And just like I showed you before, we're actually going to use the pin with the magnet on it, glue the magnet down first, and then it will be properly aligned. We'll be using our glue, be using the super glue for that. And just a little bit of super glue on the end of the magnet. We'll slide off the pin, and that'll be perfect for that. And both magnets are in. Looks good. And I'll put some glue on these holes. And then put the pin in. I'll use some super glue accelerator for this. And that should work. We'll let that dry and everything will be ready. And the pins and magnets are dry. Should just snap down on top, just like that. And that's how that looks. Looks great. That's all I do with stage 52. Let's head over and get started on stage 53. Let's look at stage 53 instructions. So our next parts for stage 53 will extend the upper hull framework again, add details of the upper plating, and sections of the assembly jig were also received here. So we can see we're going to add some more to the framework here, just like before. And tighten those screws down where we can use the assembly jig for this too if we want. And assembling the recess. So we got some parts for one of the recesses. That's cool there. And I'll take you through that. Let me get the parts and I'll be right back. Here's the parts for 53. Let's get a closer look. Here's the parts for 53. 2 more pieces of the frame. Very good. Some connectors for the frame. Some looks like some lines, some hoses, tubing, some greebles for that recess component. Here's the recess component. And one of the jigs, and I went ahead and marked it with a 53. Let's get started. Bring over our framework. We're going to install these 2 more pieces on the end here where this cutout is, and we have 4-hole connector on the bottom, 2-hole connector to put these 2 together, and a 2-hole connector on top to put those together. I'll put those together and I'll be right back. Okay, I got the 2 frames installed here. I got the 4 screws installed down here, 2 up there and 2 right here, and they are all secure and tight. And just make sure that your edge here is even, and these are as straight as possible on that edge. And we'll be installing the recess greebles on this panel here. This right here, we're going to put that aside for later on. And we'll go ahead and get started. And there's a close-up view of where those greebles get installed, and you want to put them in order 1 through, it looks like 15. It's kind of hard to see because it's in yellow, but it shows you where 1 through 15 go on that recess panel. Just a close-up of the panel. And the first greeble to go in here is number 1. That's this right here. It's going to go on those 2 notches right there. We're going to glue that down, and you've got choices. You can use Mr. Cement S if you want. You can use Tamiya extra thin, or you can use the Tamiya ABS. This plastic is actually ABS, so this is probably the best to use, but it's very thick glue. It's a very thick glue. Sometimes it's hard to manage. Okay, the next one goes on these two holes right there, and it's got two lugs. I already put some glue on them, and it's going to go down just like that. And number 3 got glued in right here. And number 4 went right here. And number 5, this one right here. That's what it looks like. And number 6, which was this large panel, went in right there. And number 7, right here. And number 8 went right there. And you can see the little tab with the hole is on the bottom side there. And number 9 was a little tricky, but that's this right here. And it's on top of this part right here, but that's it right there. Number 10 laid down right there, inserted in a hole right there, then it got glued to the side of this right here. And number 11 got glued in right there into a slot. You can see the little claw there on this end. And number 12 got glued in right there. Little tab that stuck out on the bottom, and that's how that looks. And number 13 got glued down right there. There was a little tab it went into. And number 14 went right there. Kind of reaches out and goes that direction, but that's that little panel right there. And the last greeble is this rod right here. It went in the hole that was on this little panel and goes across. And that's all I do with stage 53. Let's head over and get started on stage 54. Let's look at the build instructions for stage 54. 54, our next parts are to extend again the upper hull framework, assemble the internal battery holder, and another section of the jig. We got that. So here's all the parts on the left, battery holder here on the bottom, our frame parts, line those up like we did before. Assemble the jig. I haven't been doing that. And tighten down the screws, and then we'll assemble the battery holder. We'll get the battery. We got that from issue 9, and we'll put the screws in on that, and that will get mounted to the framework, it looks like. Let me get the parts. I will be right back. Here's the parts for 54. Let's get a closer look. Here's a close-up of the parts. Here's another hole plating. Very nice. Some more piping. Framework. 2 more pieces of the frame. Connector for the frame. Some more connectors. Looks like some nuts. And that's going to be for the battery holder. This is the battery holder. And we support bolts. The 4 bolts that we needed earlier. They came in this issue, so these are going to be very handy to support the frames while you're working on the Falcon. And lastly, the jig for 54. Let's get started. Alright, line up my next 2 frames, and they're going to continue on with what we assembled in the last stage. Put the larger one on top. 2-hole connector, 2-hole connector, 2-hole connector there, 2-hole connector on the bottom, and then this large connector on the very end. So I'll get that all assembled and I will be right back. Okay, all the screws are tight. Put the screws in right here at the connector, right there, right there, right there, and right there. And then on the other side, I put the large connector with the 4 holes on this side and the single holes on this side. Looks great. Now let's work on the battery holder. Here's all the parts for the battery holder. Here's our battery we received in stage 9. And the holder itself, these are the 2 parts we received in this stage. And a little foam cushion with the tape on the back side. And some frame screws. And you'll need the longer gold colored screws. And I just made sure they screwed into those nuts that came with this stage. They're like black nuts. And just peel the tape backing off here. And that's going to go down right in the middle there. That's good there. Now I'm going to take battery holder, just like it looks now, and that's going to mount just like that. Just like you see it. And we're going to put cover on, and it goes on a certain way. Just make sure you have it lined up the right way, and that looks like the right way. If you look at it, when you squeeze it down, that's what it will look like. Okay, if you put it on wrong, it's going to look like this. Okay, not lined up at all. Okay, so you definitely want it flipped around, and we'll put our screws in. We'll put our nuts in here and the screws. And both screws are installed. You can see that there. Looks great. Okay, so we'll bring over our frame assembly, and it's sitting upside down basically. And we're going to take our battery compartment here, and we're going to insert it from underneath. Bring in our cable on the inside, and it's simply just going to line up just like that. And then I'm going to turn it over and put the screws in. And we have 4 screws, frame screws, the black button heads that go in right here. I'll be right back. Battery holder is installed. All 4 screws are in. That's what that looks like. It looks great. So that completes stage 54. Let's head over and do stage 55. Moving along, let's go ahead and look at the instructions for stage 55. And for 55, we got our parts to extend the upper hull framework again, and also received the sections of the assembly jig for this, and the 2 braces for the ramp mechanism. So these braces are right here on the bottom, and I'll explain that when we get to that. We're also going to install some of the recessed panels that we already painted and assembled previously. So we're going to be digging out the other frame for that, but we're going to work on the top frames. We're going to install those. 2 more parts going down. That's easy enough. And then here's the frame actuator braces. Now they just want you to test fit them and don't glue them in place until we're able to do the operational check on this first. So we're not going to be able to power this up just yet, and I'll bring it out and show you what's going on with that, but we're not going to glue them in place. And then we're going to fit the recesses on the lower hull too. The ones we painted, those are those black ones. Those are going to go, and looks like we're going to use the self-tapping screws for that also, the shorter brass self-tapping screws to install those down. All right, let me get the parts and I'll be right back. Here's the parts for 55. Let's get a closer look. Here's the parts. Here's 2 more whole frame pieces that we received with this. We're going to assemble. Here's the connectors for those. Here's the armor plating on the outside there. Very cool. And here's the ramp actuator braces I was talking about. We're going to test fit those. And we received some more screws. Also, the jig came also, number 55 jig. Let's get started. And once again, we're going to extend on the hull plating. We're going to add to it that we added on from before. This is what we put on in the previous stage. So we're going to put this piece on, right on here, onto that long connector piece. And then we're going to put the smaller piece here, that flat edge, going along just like that with the 4-hole connector and the 2-hole connector. I'll be right back. Here's the frames installed with the screws. They're tight. These 2 here and these 4 right here. Give you an idea on what the panel looks like from that angle and from that angle. Okay, let's move on to the next step. Okay, I brought over the ramp, and here's the actuators themselves. 4 of them. And here's those pieces. We're not going to glue them in place. But if you look closely, there's a recess on the edge. You can see that recess on both sides. The recess goes down. So they'll just insert just like that. One there. And one here. And that's what they look like. I'm not going to glue them in place until we're able to do a functional check of the ramp, but that's how they look. Okay, let's move on to the next step. Next, we're going to go ahead and install these recess panels on the lower hull, and this one comes from number 19. You can see it has all the straight edges inside there from stage 19, and the other one comes from stage 42. So if we take our lower hull and to counterclockwise from the ramp, 42 goes right here, and then 19 will go on the other side. I'll be right back. Installing 4 of the shorter brass colored self-tapping screws. I'll show you a picture of them. All 4 screws are installed, both sides. They look good. We'll look at the other side in a little bit. We'll go ahead and put number 19 in, stage 19 recess panel right there. Same thing, we'll put 4 of the shorter brass self-tapping screws. The recess panel from stage 19 is installed. All 4 brass screws are installed. Looks great. Let's look at the other side. And there's 19. And 42. And that's all I do for stage 55. Let's head over and do the final stage for this video, stage 56. Let's look at the final stage for Pack 12, stage 56. And in the stage I received the parts for the upper hull framework, and those 2 parts here, we're going to install those a little bit later as we're waiting for more parts to hook those to. So those will be on hold, but we will be detailing the thrust vector plates, and I've opted to go ahead and install all of them, and I can airbrush and mask around or over all those plates. We received the actuators in stages 32, 33, and 34. We also received the stabilizer assemblies in stage 34, and then the left and right plant-on braces from issue or stage 45. So I'm going to be gluing all those in place And then we're going to add some additional details from the other greeblies that we haven't installed yet. You can see that here, all the trees with those greeblies on there, and I'll show you those. And they tell you just be very careful with handling the Falcon after that, because they can easily be broken off or lost. And we'll take you through that step by step. So let me get the parts and I will be right back. Here's the parts for 56. Let's get a closer look. Here's a close-up of the parts, and here's this hull panel here. Very nice, very well detailed. And some greebles. And the hull plating. Since I'm not going to be installing them in this stage, I went ahead and marked them with the 56. And the connectors also with the 56, and I'll put those away in safekeeping. Let's get started. Alright, I lined up all the thrust vector plates and actuators, and also the plant-on pieces from 45. Note that this actuator here is shorter than the others, and this one's from stage 33. Okay, so we'll go ahead and proceed to glue these in place. I'll be back after they're glued in. I will be using my ABS glue. It seems to work best. A little longer drying time than the other glue, but it does dry fast. Not as fast as, you know, the extra thin or the Mr. Cement S, but there you go. Okay, 6 of them are glued down, and I concentrated the glue on the lower edge of the upper corner here, and of course the 2 holes at the bottom there all the way across. And then the 7th one is reserved for that shorter one you received in issue 33, and that's where that will go. And then of course the rest will follow down the line. Okay, all the thrust vector plates are installed, both sides. You can see that. Now I'll start installing the pressure stabilizers. There's 4 of them here. Before I install these pressure stabilizers, I went ahead and sanded the bottoms of them with 100 grit sanding stick, just to get them to level out a little bit and sit more flatter on the Falcon. And of course I'll glue them in place. And of course I glued them there. Goes down just like that. And I'll put the other 3 on next. And all 4 of them are installed. Right there. And the last one. Now let's install the left and right Y-shaped braces. And here are those braces. This is how they'll install on the Falcon. One will go right here into that slot, and the other one will go over there, just laying flat down. And there they are, glued down. And that completes that segment. Now let's move over and add the final details, all the other greeblies that we haven't installed yet, and I'll take you through those. I'll be right back. Here are the greebles we saved on the sprues from stages 44, 45, and 47. There's 4 of them here. We have others still yet to go on, but these are the ones we're concentrating on. So I'll go ahead and take you through step by step on where they go. The first one to install comes from stage 44, and it says on the sprue there. I'll be cutting that off and installing it. Okay, here's that part cut off. Be very careful. Very delicate part here. Now the bottom here has a large pin, and that pin is going to go right there. There's a hole, and as you're looking at the bottom of the Millennium Falcon, where your thrust vectors are, it's towards the right hand side on the very end here, so you have a hole there, and then there's a hole on the side right there. right there. And you can see it glued in right there and right there. Perfect. You can see how delicate that is, so definitely want to be careful when you're handling this later on. Now I'm going to install the other one from stage 45 to the other side. And there it is installed. Right there and right there. Alright, here's the next 4 parts we're going to glue down. And note that the top pieces here are left and right by the parts sticking out there on the ends. And these are going to lay down on the machinery close to the area where we installed those other pieces previously. And the first 2 pieces, the left and the right pieces, are installed right there. There was a couple of notches that they went down on. Next we'll install a part right here. And there that is, glued down right there. And the next part, you'll see there is a tab that's going to go on top of this and mount to this on the ends. So I need to turn this over. Insert it on the rod there and on the end, just like that. Take some Mr. Cement S, glue it down, and let that dry. That's how that looks. It looks great. Very, very you want to be careful with this because it is like very detailed here, can easily get broken off. And here are the next parts lined up. These came from issue or stage 47, and I did clean off all the little attachment nubs with an X-Acto blade just to kind of neaten them up a little bit. My OCD kicks in for that, unfortunately, but it's not perfect. Neither was the real Millennium Falcon, because let's face it, these greebles came off of hundreds of model kits, and I'm sure they did not clean up any of them. They just glued them down in place. So take note that you have attachment nubs on these ones here. These appear to be the same. Doesn't matter how they'll go. And then we have attachment nubs for these 2 up there. The other thing, I should have mentioned this earlier, do not use tweezers to hold these and install them. You run the risk of the part flying off into oblivion and you never find it. If you can use your fingers to initially install them, add some glue to them, and then you can go ahead and take your tweezer and adjust them as necessary on the part to realign. That's fine, use the tweezers for that, but if you can use your finger, use your fingers because they won't fly out of your fingers. Now I took the Falcon, I turned it 180 degrees to where we have the narrow part of the laser cannon showing on this end here. We're going to install the next parts in this areas here. Okay, some of the tubing and the brackets, we're going to go there, and then the next parts will go, some of the tubing will go over on this end over here. I'll be right back. And there's the next 2 pieces glued down. I glued the bottom parts and then I let it fall forward, and then I put some glue on the top for both of them. Okay, you can see a close-up of those parts we put in on both sides. And now this smaller tubing with the notch lays down on top there, and it just rests on the side there. So I'm going to put some glue on that. And that should hold all that in place. Do the same on the other side. There you go. And right there. That should dry, and it will be perfect. Looks great. We've got 2 more parts to put in, then we'll be done with this stage. Once again, I took the Falcon and I flipped it 180 degrees to where we have this side here on the other side of the laser cannon area. And the next tubings are these large ones here, and they're going to mount to this right here and this right here on each side. Just like that. Put some glue on it. Perfect. Okay. Put some cement on there. Here we go. And the other side is installed. Both are glued down. Looks great. Wow, I had a blast with this pack. So much to do here. So many tiny detail parts. We actually did a lot, and I enjoyed this pack immensely. Pack 12 was a lot of fun to do. So I hope to have pack 13 around the end of January. I'm going to be out of town for a couple weeks, and you'll see that. I'll post that up on my channel. But it's my annual pilgrimage, and you'll see that here next. But anyway, with all that, I will be right back. And there you go. That completes pack 12. I had a blast building this. It's a lot of fun. We did a lot here to the lower hull for the Millennium Falcon. We installed all this stuff on the back end here. That was a blast doing some greebles throughout. And we started making more progress on the upper hull frames. We installed the battery and all that on there too. So stay tuned for pack 13 coming up here shortly. If you haven't done so already, head over to FanHome, the Agostini. Actually, it's found on the FanHome website. I put a direct link down below. And subscribe to this. Why would you want to pass up on a copy of the original Empire Strikes Back Millennium Falcon? This is an impressive piece and will look very nice in my man cave when I get it done. So there you go. If you like my content, please subscribe to my channel and smash that like button. Look for some giveaways this year. I'll be doing that as soon as I launch my new studio, which I am still working on. Take care, everybody. Happy New Year.